Hey, we've got not just one, but two new engines announced for the 2024 PWC models. Let's talk about those. Hey, this is Captain Frank with the Ship's Log, and the end of the boating PWC season is not really an exciting time for us because we're coming to the point where at least those of us who live in the north, we're thinking about having to put our skis up and wait until spring to ride again. But one of the exciting things that we do have at this time of year is the announcements for what's going to come with the models for the next model year. For 2024, we actually have some exciting things happening. Both Doo and Yamaha have announced brand new engines for some of the 2024 model PWCs. And I think you're going to be surprised at what some of the differences are. But before we get into that, do me a favor, please make sure that you like this video and subscribe to the channel because it really does help me a lot. Also, if there's anybody else out there that you think will enjoy this type of content, please go ahead and share that with them as well. Okay, so both Doo and Yamaha have announced new engines for some of their 2024 models. In both cases, the engines are more powerful. There's actually other improvements that they say that you'll experience with these engines as well. But I want to get into each one of those, talk about them a little bit, and just talk about some of the things that I noticed as far as the changes. So we're going to start with Doo. For 2024, Doo announced a 325 horsepower PWC engine. This is definitely going to be the most powerful engine stock off the showroom floor in any PWC so far. Now, you're only going to be able to get in the RXPX 325. Maybe later on it may be in some of the other models, I really don't know, but of course the RXPX 325, or the RXPX in general, is actually their more sporty model and has always been the fastest model out there. Prior to this, Doo had a 300 horsepower, now they're bumping it up to 325. Now, my first impressions on this engine, especially when I found out that the displacement is the same. Doo has been using the 1630cc engine for quite some time now. It started at horsepowers in the 200s. A few years ago, they went up to 300. And I remember when they got to 300 horsepower, I was like, man, that's a lot of horsepower for an engine that size. It's 3 cylinders, 1.6 liter, 1600, cc's, whatever. That's a lot of horsepower to get out of an engine like that. Well, now they're bumping it up to 325 horsepower. But we're talking about the same displacement as previous. So let's talk about engines a little bit and how you get more power out of them. There's a couple of ways that you can get more power, at least more significant power, out of an engine. Now, granted, you can have an engine of a certain size and, a tune can get you some additional power by changing the timing of valves and spark and so on and so forth. So that can get you a little bit more. But basically, to get more power, you got to burn more fuel. Okay, so you got to somehow get more fuel into the cylinders so that you can combust that fuel and make more power. If you're going to get more fuel into the cylinders, of course, you have to get more air into the cylinders so that there is actually enough air in there or oxygen in there for the combustion process as well. Now, there's two ways to do that in general. One, of course, is to simply make the cylinders bigger, make a bigger engine. If you make a bigger engine, then it's naturally going to pull in more air as the engine is turning. That's what you can do if it's a naturally aspirated engine. Every time that cylinder pulls down, it sucks in more air because you have a larger cylinder, and you can get more fuel in there, and there you go. The other way, of course, is what we call forced induction. This is either a turbo or a supercharger. And basically what that does is it pumps more air into the cylinder. And of course, it allows you to put more fuel in so that, again, bigger bang, you get more power. So obviously, Sea-Doo was still using a 1630 cc engine, so it's not a bigger engine, it's not bigger cylinders. So what they're doing is they're pumping more air and pumping more fuel into the same size engine. Now, again, I go, wow, that's 300 was a lot. Now they're talking 325. Like, is this engine really going to be able to handle this? That was my first thought when I heard that this is what they were doing. So basically, Sea-Doo was turning the boost up, if you will, from about 12.8 psi to 15.2. Okay, so that's a significant increase in boost. Get more air in there, more fuel, you get more power. Now, obviously, the guys at Sea-Doo, they know what they're doing. They've been doing this for a long time. They know that you probably don't want to do that without doing something to the engine to make the engine be able to handle the increased pressure that's actually going to be put on it. You know, there's a saying that we have in the auto industry. When people do things to cars, you put superchargers, turbos, whatever on a car that didn't initially have it, you might have to do what we call harden the engine, which means you have to change some of the components to more robust components that can actually handle the additional stress. So let's look at what Sea-Doo actually did with this engine, because what I found is this is not the same 1630 engine that they've been using and they just turned the boost up. They've actually done some other things. First of all, of course, they redid the intake. Well, yeah, if you want to get more air in there, you got to make sure that there's a less restrictive intake so that you actually can easily do that. So we have a redone intake. New supercharger. Sea-Doo did have some problems with their superchargers, and now with turning the boost up, requiring more out of the supercharger, they actually have a redesigned supercharger. It uses a Sprag clutch. It creates less heat than the previous ones did, which means you can get more boost out of it without having to make a larger intercooler. So they can actually use the same size intercooler because the supercharger that they have now creates less heat. So because of the increased boost, now this thing will rev up to 8250, and this is of course stock. Obviously people are probably going to buy these things and tune them, and who knows what they'll get after that. But stock, it'll rev up to 8250. They've got additional oil jets because obviously you're revving higher, you're putting more stress on the engine, so additional oil jets actually make sure that you can keep the parts lubricated a little bit better. There's a redesigned block, even though it is the same displacement. It is a redesigned block so that it is actually a beefier, better built block, if you will. The pistons and the crank are both redone. Again, to make those beefier. They're not using the same pistons, they're not using the same crank. The ones that they have now will actually be able to handle additional pressure that's going to be put on them. So basically, you have a hardened PWC engine. So what you have, a hardened Sea-Doo engine, if you will. Now, there's also speculation that because they have done all of this, if you buy one of these, because we know a lot of people like to buy these machines and they like to tear into the engine, and they like to increase the boost, they like to put a tune on it, they like to do all kinds of things that they can do to it, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, whatever, so that they can get more power. So they can, they can have the bragging rights. They want to, they got 325, they want to bump it up to 350, they might want to bump it up to 370, whatever it is. Typically, there's a limit to how much you can do to that machine before you really have to start replacing major parts. So if you go buy, say, a 2022 Yamaha, Sea-Doo, whatever, yeah, you can throw a tune on it and run it, and you don't really have to do anything major. You can do a stage 1 without having to replace any major engine parts. But you want to do a stage 2 or stage 3, now you're having to start replacing parts. Well, now, it seems like what Sea-Doo has done is because, they're kind of moving into that area of being tuners themselves, it seems. It seems they've already done some of that work for you. And this is just my opinion. I don't know what the limits are of this engine, but it seems like some of that stuff they may have already done for you. So you want to go beyond 325, you want to put a stage 1, you want to go to stage 2, you may not have to replace all of those components that you would have had to replace in the past. That's pretty much what I'm saying. I'm not an expert on that. I don't know that for sure, but just looking at what they've done, it's possible that Sea-Doo has done some of that work for you in designing this new engine. So obviously, we'll see what happens in the future. You know, there's already guys out there creating tunes for this engine. So soon you're going to see that stuff popping up out there. So what I want to know is, do you plan on buying one? Are you excited about this engine? Have you been waiting for this particular engine to come out? Are you happy with the 300 or the 270 or whatever it is you might have? Yeah, comment down below. Let me know if this is something you've been waiting for, or does it really matter to you? You know, some people say, hey, in the US, they still limit those things to 70 miles an hour, so does it really matter? Maybe. But anyway, let me know. So that's what Sea-Doo has. Let's talk about Yamaha. So Yamaha seems to have done the opposite thing as to what Sea-Doo did when it comes to being able to create more horsepower. Now, the new engine that Yamaha came out with is not a supercharged engine. It's not a turbocharged engine. It is a naturally aspirated engine. So, you know, right now, if you go, say, buy a Yamaha VX, a GP1800, an FX, whatever, you've got two engine options. You can get the 1.8 liter naturally aspirated, which is a really good engine, and it's probably going to give you somewhere around 170 horsepower. Or you can go with the 1.8 liter supercharged. Same engine, except it's supercharged. And that's going to give you about 250 horsepower. So what Yamaha has done now is they have come out with a 1.9 liter. This is still naturally aspirated, not supercharged. It's a 1.9 liter. They're going to offer it in the VX, not the SVHO because it's not supercharged, but the VXHO, GP1800, HO, FX and FX Cruiser HO. So not any of the supercharged engines. And what it's doing, it's taking your 170 horsepower and you're bumping it up to about 200 horsepower. So if you're looking for a non-supercharged machine, you can actually get the 1.9 and now you're in the 200 horsepower range, which is more than any other naturally aspirated machine out there. So that's going to be interesting. Some people are asking the question, well, why didn't they just go ahead and, you know, go up to 2 liter? I'm not sure. But again, first impressions. My first impression was, okay, they just took the 1.8, they bored it out a little bit more, made the cylinders a little bit larger, now we have a 1.9. Well, nope, that's not the truth. Again, this is a whole new engine. So if you look at the list of things that Yamaha did with this new engine, it's got a new throttle body design, again, so that you can allow more air-fuel mixture in there. There's a crankcase design that allows you to have better oil flow than the 1.8. The 1.8 is a great engine, so it's not that there were problems with that, but I guess they're saying, hey, you know, we want to create more power, we want to have better oil flow. There are new pistons, a new block, new cylinder heads. The exhaust ports have been redesigned to allow the engine to breathe a lot better than the 1.8. So in addition to the additional displacement, the fact that the engine breathes better is going to make a difference as well. There's a redesigned combustion chamber for more efficient burn of the fuel so that you can get more power. And there's also a camshaft change. It's a newly designed camshaft, which gives you better mid-range torque in the engine. So, you know, let's assume you're already going 35 miles an hour and you want to bump it up to 60, you know, it's going to make that jump a lot quicker because you've got better mid-range torque there. So once again, Not just a bored out engine, not just taking the same engine and doing something simple to it. They made a whole lot of changes because it really is a brand new engine. Now here is the interesting thing. I've already said that this is a naturally aspirated engine. It does not have a supercharger. It does not have a turbocharger. But some of the engine experts, some people that know more about PWC engines than I do, have actually looked at this engine and they've said, this thing is already set up for a supercharger. It's already designed to have a supercharger connected to it. So my question is, and what I'm really speculating about, is that what Yamaha is going to do next year for the 2025 model? I have no idea, but it makes sense to me. Plus, if the engine is already designed to have a supercharger connected to it, you got to think that's what Yamaha was thinking. So for 2025, is Yamaha going to have a 1.9 liter supercharged engine in their FX, SVHO, their GP 1800, whatever? Is that going to be an option? If it is going to be an option, that is going to be a really exciting option. Now, if they do, how powerful is it going to be? I don't know, 300, 310? It really depends on what Yamaha decides to do. If you know one thing about Yamaha, they've never been a company to try to get into the horsepower race. You don't see them advertising horsepower on any of their machines. You see Sea-Doo doing it, you see Kawasaki doing it, but you don't see Yamaha saying anything about that. They stay pretty quiet about that. Their skis are just as fast as everybody else's, but you don't see them touting that number. But the fact is, in my mind, I'm thinking, if you're coming out with, you've already got a 1.9 liter, it's already set up for a supercharger. That's probably where you're going. And really, how much horsepower it has is really going to be all about how much boost they decide to give it. That's going to determine, how much horsepower and how fast that machine is going to be. Again, US, we're still faced with the same thing, 70 miles an hour max off the showroom floor. But we know people do things to them after they buy them. So we'll just have to see what happens. I do know that Yamaha tends to throw less boost at their machines, and this is one of the reasons why I do believe they are more reliable, because Yamaha builds an engine that's not as stressed. You currently have a 1.8 liter supercharged, largest engine in the PWC industry until the 1.9 just came out. And they're not throwing, they can throw a lot more boost at it than they do. But they don't do that, and it's just as fast as the other machines out there. I think that's by design. I think they're going to do the same thing with the 1.9. I don't think they're shooting for 350 horsepower, because I don't think they're trying to beat everybody else with a number. I think what they are trying to do is to make sure that they're just as fast or faster as anybody else out there, but also making sure that they're also the most reliable. But what are your thoughts on that? Not everybody agrees with me. Comment down below. Let me know what you think. And again, don't forget, if you haven't already liked it, please like the video. Please follow the channel. Please share the channel. And I definitely would like to see your comments, because who knows, you guys may know some stuff or have heard some stuff that I have not. And I would definitely be interested in knowing about it, and I'm sure everybody else would too. So until next time, happy riding.